Greetings, Tom Merle here. Welcome to the celebration. I know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy, it means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment you are valued, you are appreciated, and you are loved. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed last week's solo episode. The replay episodes are finished, going to be putting out all new episodes moving forward. So what I want to share with you today is 3 stories that have really been lessons learned for me for 2022. They are some stories you can apply to your business, to your life, to everything underneath and in between. So the first one comes from a very intense experience I had over this year. And that was building out a full-time, fully commission-based sales team. That actually started, I would say, this time last year. You're about to get yourself a story within a story, folks. You may know I am a context person. So this is, I'm giving you the context so that you can understand and appreciate the story fully. So here we go. Story within a story time. So I remember we had walked my daughter to daycare. And by we, I mean my wife and I. And I was updating her on some things going on in my business. My wife is one of my greatest advisors and confidants. So I just don't know what I'd do without her. So, I was sharing, hey, this ad funnel I'm running is really rocking and rolling. And my calendar now is almost completely booked out. I'm coaching in the morning and doing 5-6 sales calls a day, and it's starting to become a lot. So I was talking about how I'm going to need to start to build out a sales team. And I was trying to project in my mind when that would happen. So when we were walking, she was saying, hey, this is when we're going to go to Nigeria. So we kind of finalized together. We're going to go to Nigeria this was last year. For the whole month of February, we're going to go there. So then I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So that means that I need to have somebody, 2 people hired, trained, and ready to go before we leave, because there's no way I'm going to be able to take calls while we're overseas. So that right there started a almost year-long journey of building out my sales team. And I learned so many lessons about myself, about business, about offers, about leadership, about pitching, about all of it. So many things. Shout out to all my therapists who helped me work through stuff, my friends, because managing people, especially when they're commission-based, is a whole experience, at least for me. I mean, the fact that it sounds good in theory, hey, having someone on your team who makes money when you make money, but if you ever hit a lull, cash flow is good for you because you got subscriptions and payment plans going. But for your team, they're like, where's the new cash? So you're just constantly needing to inject fresh cash into the business to keep your sales team, secure. So anyways, that's the story within a story. So we had 2 positions we were hiring for, a setter and a closer. So the closer is the person, obviously, who closes the call. And then the setter is the person who makes the initial call, warms the person up, makes sure they're qualified, all of that. So we had found a closer that was just absolutely amazing. She is a rock star. But we were having a little trouble finding somebody to do the setting position. It's a tough position to fill. If you've ever done it yourself, you're nodding your head saying yes. So one of the things that I was finding is, every time someone new came on, I was having to show them everything all over again. And not the big stuff. I had some really great tutorials and everything to explain stuff to people, but more the little stuff, the fine tuning, like, hey, I watched the tutorial, I have this question. So what I started doing was anytime anyone ever had a question on my team, I would record a loom, and then I would label the loom accordingly, and I just basically created a frequently asked questions Google Doc that would say the question they asked, and then it had the loom. And then anytime somebody would come on the team that was new, there was the expectation that before you ask, look at the Google Doc. So I had someone come on the team, amazing human being, but definitely struggled with technology. So I was spending a lot of time helping them with the tech part. And when you have two full-time salespeople, that can mean that in a given day, one of the people's making 100 outbound calls, and your closer has 5 to 6 scheduled calls. Plus, at this point, we had almost 50 clients. So there's a lot of moving parts. Okay. So my whole thing was just always like, stay calm. Okay. So there was this one time where the new person was basically, I had sent them some very detailed instructions where they asked a question. I sent them very detailed questions. And then they came back and were like, hey, this really doesn't make sense to me. And so I recorded them another video and sent it. And they're like, hey, this really doesn't make sense to me. And, I'm going to own it. At this point, I started to internally lose my patience. Now, they didn't know this because that's the beauty of remote. You can be like, oh my gosh. And they don't know that, right? But I internally lost my patience. And so I just, said, hey, can you please just rewatch it and see if there's a specific question that you have in there. And then she, a little bit later was like, probably was sensing that maybe I was starting to get to the edge of my patience realm. And they're like, Tom, I watched this 3 or 4 times and I really don't get it at all. And I was like, oh my gosh. You can imagine if you've ever been there and you're already stressed out in your own life, and then now your team member is stressed and you're like, okay, keep your cool. So anyways, I don't know what made me do it, but I was like, okay, let me watch the video I sent them and just see where the confusion is. So anyways, I clicked on the video that I had sent them with the directions that was causing so much confusion. And I watched it and I realized I had mislabeled my videos, because at the same time, putting out all these fires, and there was this really complex technical coding problem that I was working on the back end of our CRM. And so I was talking to chat support there. And it was a complex problem that I barely understood, which is why I needed to reach out to chat support. So it was like very, very complex language, all these kind of things. So I had that video. And then I had the video breaking down a very simple task in like very accessible language for my team. And I had mislabeled them. So I had sent this person this like very complicated thing that I barely understand. I sent it to them and they don't even understand the fundamentals yet. So they're watching this and they're like, I don't understand a single thing on this. And to be honest, it makes complete sense why they didn't understand a single thing, because it was way beyond their ability. It was barely even my ability. So all that to say, all along, as I'm getting totally frustrated with this person, it has nothing to do with them. I'm the one who made the mistake. I sent them the wrong video. And so of course they were confused, but over on my end, I am now creating a story. I'm now judging this person and I'm now filing it away that, oh, this is frustrating. Is it even worth it? And when all along it was me. I was creating the confusion. I was creating the drama. I was creating the problems. And what was making it even worse is I was just fuming on the inside, and I'm sure the person was feeling it. So now they're starting to feel worried and anxious and, oh my gosh, have I upset the boss and all that kind of stuff, right? So on this one, it's definitely an embarrassing story. Definitely sharing this makes me self-conscious, but I hope that it is a mirror. And I bet if you were to write down things that happen to you, like I religiously do, if you were to look back, like this is a story from, I don't know, 8 months ago, you would also see a time where perhaps you got mad at somebody and you blamed it all on them, when in reality, it was 100% your fault. This right here is extremely, extremely tough, to always start from a place of personal responsibility. That, hey, what about this situation am I doing that's causing confusion? Especially when the only person that we can control, or the only person whose information we have total access to, is our own. So this was a huge reminder, especially when you're leading a team, that it starts 100% with you. If your team's confused, it's because you're confusing. If everybody's stressed, it's because you're stressful. If people are unclear, it's because you're unclear. This is one of the greatest lessons that I've learned, especially as we've scaled from just me doing everything to it being out of my hands because it's grown so big. And so it always comes back to personal responsibility. It is a doozy. So I want to read to you this next story. So that's our big takeaway for this first story, my friends. Always look for, in this situation, what can I control? And it's always our own reaction. And it's always what we can take responsibility for. Everything else, we can try to hold other people accountable. We can create boundaries. We can, step out of a situation if we're able to, if it's toxic. But in the end, we are responsible for ourselves. Okay, I want to read you this other story. It comes out of the book Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. Almost called him Will Ferriss. Not true. Tim Ferriss, my friends. Tim Ferriss is one of these huge, epic characters. Anytime you get that big, people are always going to have something positive and negative to say. So say what you want about Tim. This book right here, Tribe of Mentors, one of my absolute favorite books. Why? He pulls together some really awesome people who don't normally put out content and asks them some really awesome questions and compiled it into a book. And it's one of my favorite books. It's actually one of the few books that I re-listen to almost every year. So I was re-listening to this last year, actually, and I took note of this story. I want to share it with you. There's a lot of lessons we can grab from here. So this is in the chapter of Esther Perel. And Esther is, I'm going to read you a little bit about her bio, has been called the most important game changer in sexuality and relationships health since Dr. Ruth. Her TED Talks on maintaining desire and rethinking infidelity have more than 17 million views, and she's been seen and tested everything imaginable in 34 years of running her private therapy practice. Okay, so that's just a little bit of context on her. So I'm going to read directly from this book, and I want to share a story that she shares. So she's talking in the first person. So example, she says, a friend of mine told me a story. I'm not talking about one of my friends. I'm reading Esther's words. And she's talking about one of her friends. Okay, so here we go. A friend of mine recently told me a story that speaks to this point. He had taken his daughter to visit a college, and they requested a tour of one particular center she was set on. And the facilities manager showed them around with really great pride, from the principal's office to the media center to the utility room. Surprised by the exhaustive tour, the daughter rolled her eyes, but her father told her, just ask questions. You never know what will happen. When they were finally done, the facilities manager gave them his card, and my friend instructed his daughter to write a thank you note and to specifically mention 2 things that were memorable about the experience. The next day, the daughter got a call from the president of the center. Evidently, the facilities manager had forwarded her email with a note telling him, this is the kind of student we need here. You can guess what followed. So Esther concludes the story with, always take the time to acknowledge people, and not just when you know you have something to gain. If you show interest in them, they will be interested in you. People react to kindness with kindness, to respect with respect. Relationships even brief ones, are doorways to opportunity. Whoo! This is fire. Forget my story. This is this right here. This is the kind of thing to read and reread all the time. We never know when we're having interactions with people, where's it going to lead? And for me, I'm always really thinking of good advice that my ego likes to hide itself within. So this is one right here, right? You hear a story like this: relationships, even brief ones, are doorways to opportunity. So something like that, if the ego gets a hold of it, can take that and make relationships really transactional, right? If somebody comes up and feels like, oh my gosh, this person's wasting my time, this is so annoying, oh, I just want this to be over. And so instead of reacting with impatience or anger or hostility, if we say to ourselves, well, you never know, Esther was saying that, relationships, even brief ones, are doorways to opportunity. So let me be nice to this person because maybe they'll lead somewhere. So that in and of itself can start to become transactional. This is where, we start to hang out with people in the hopes of getting something. The other day, this reminds me, story within a story. Here we go. It reminds me, I was having a porch hangout with one of my people. Porch and pizza, good music is one of my favorite things to do. Have good conversations. So I was hanging out with somebody, and they are pretty big in the business world. And let me just leave it at that. So anyways, we were just talking, and one of the things we started to talk about was what it means to us to be fathers. And we were specifically talking about this intentional decision that we were both making to hold back in business, right? Where there's opportunities that we're given, or partnerships or client opportunities. So basically opportunities to further our business mission in terms of bringing in more finances, making more impact, legacy, all of that kind of stuff. So there's like that. And we're both really good at what we do. So there's almost an endless amount of opportunity that we could pursue. So that's kind of that. Okay. And it feels very much like the generation now, but especially the generations before us, there was this socialization that it's the job of the father to provide. And so oftentimes a lot of dads, they sound familiar, that's the way they would show their love. And some people, I mean that genuinely. Some people, I mean that, love is definitely a rounded word in that sentence. So a lot of times what you find is men who go all in on trying to provide for the family, past survival, right? So past like, hey, I need to work 3 jobs to put food on the table, and more like, everyone here is financially great. And so, but yet you're still working an excessive amount, to the point where that's really the only way you're showing your love is, quote unquote, financially providing. And so this is where we see a lot of emotionally unavailable men who really only know how to function by working. So we were talking about, basically making intentional decisions to not walk down that path, even though we very easily could. So then we kind of progressed to talking about, well, it's not just that we're making this decision to be present with our families. It's how many men actually have platonic friendships. This is something, if you look at different studies, you find that a lot of men, especially when they get married, their only friend is really their partner. That men, as they get older, are terrible at maintaining relationships, and there's a bunch of studies that show it significantly damages our health. So I was saying, there's something to the fact that we're even creating time in our life, instead of like right now working, that we're sitting here together and just bonding. And then he was kind of sharing with me, he's hung out with some people in the past, and because of who he is, that they either brag to him, or they try to use the meaning as like, hey, let's hang out as friends. And really they're just kind of like looking for an angle on how to maybe make a deal or make money off this person. And then I was like, oh, you're totally right. Like, I can see that. I have done that in my younger youth, where you meet someone and you're like, oh, they got it going on. Let's hang out. And if I listen long enough, I bet I'll find an opportunity where we can make some money together. And so the whole meeting is kind of transactional. You're asking these questions and looking for an angle to be like, well, actually, I can do that. And it's interesting because he had been talking of a lot of things that were in my area of expertise, and I was just sharing my thoughts. But at no point was I like, I should pitch this person. So let me rewind it back. This isn't a story. Another story sounds very self-congratulatory of like, look how awesome I am. Yay, I'm one of the good guys. But it's more of, kind of seeing how I wasn't being transactional in that moment, shined a mirror of seeing how I had been transactional many, many times previously. So especially for my folks out there who are entrepreneurs, it can be so easy for us to only have people on our calendar for whom we can talk about business and get business ideas and maybe make some money together. And that can quickly become imbalanced and toxic. So when we talk about, for me, when I think of relationships, even brief ones, are always doorways to opportunities. It's really, for me, I often look at it as, I want to appreciate this interaction just for all that it has to offer in this moment right now. I don't need this to be, the fact that I'm spending this time with you, to be somehow justified by some sort of reward I'm going to reap down the road, or some pitfall that you helped me avoid down the road. I just want to enjoy it as a gift from the generous present moment. That's one of the more like Sufi Zen practices that I've been trying to do to make sure that I don't allow my ego to turn things into transactional relationships. So this is really tough one, especially if you're in business. So that's why I wanted to share this with you to think on. Now, let me give you an example here. This is your third story. We're coming to you in our final story here. So if you don't already, I have a notebook, a digital notebook that's just labeled stories. And as I'm going throughout my week, as I'm going throughout my life, I screenshot things, I copy and paste things into this. And so what I did for this episode is I went and looked for 3 stories that I thought were awesome and that I thought were connected to each other. So this last story was from a Facebook post that I posted in April 2014. So at this point, I hadn't even been in Los Angeles for a year, but that first year was intense, my friends. I had moved 10 times in less than a year. So it was wild. Okay. So this is the story that I shared. So I was describing how I was at the mall on Saturday, and this person comes up to me and starts asking me, hey, how much is this shirt? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't work here. And he's like, okay, cool. But how much is this shirt? Can you help me find one in my size? I'm like, hey, I would love to, but I have no context because I don't work here and it's my first time here. And the person's like still not getting it. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to walk away. So I just walked away. They're like, all right, whatever. So then I get there. And by the way, there is a little bit of a language barrier between the two of us. Neither of us spoke the other person's first language very well. So I want you to give this person some grace here. Anyways, later in the day, I'm in the store in the mall. A totally other store is maybe an hour later. This was back during my times where I was doing a lot of shows, so I had to have some nice outfits because I'm usually not one to spend longer than a few minutes in a mall. Okay, so anyways, the person later comes up to me and was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I figured it out. I thought you worked at the other store, and I didn't get it till I saw you at this store." That like, oh, you're shopping just like me. And so the person was like super sorry. It was like we both thought it was hilarious. And we're like, hey, it's all good. I got your back. Fun little story. But the story's not done, because then that was Saturday. The following Friday, okay, I was at the mosque, the masjid, for Friday prayer. And this was in a completely different city. Like, these places are like an hour away from each other, okay? I'm in a completely different city. And this guy comes up to me and says salams. And then I'm like, wa alaikum salam, rahmatullah barakatuh. And he's like, wait a sec, I know you. And I'm like, must have seen one of my poetry videos, feeling pretty fresh. And he's like, no, that's not it. I don't know anything about this poetry. I'm like, all right. So like, in my mind, I'm trying to place him. And then he's like, I know, you're the person from the mall that I kept harassing to see how much his shirt was. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's true. He's like, oh my God, dude, I had no idea you're Muslim. That must have been the reason I was drawn to you. And we like hugged and we said salams. And anytime we'd see each other in the masjid, then, because must have been right around Ramadan, it was like, we would like show each other so much love. We're just like totally connected. Okay. This is a story for me that when I think back to it, it's like everything has its place. Everything has its place. How did him and I know that all along we'd been praying in the same place for weeks, and something about maybe that energy led us to have this conversation that was just weird. But sometimes I think when we see people, we're just attracted to people, and our souls are like, talk to this person, and then our mouth's like, how much is this shirt? And you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So like our mouths, the intellect's like, well, we got that one wrong, sorry, soul. So just trust when you meet people. I have found this a lot in my life, that sometimes I've worked on a project with somebody in a space and the project was horrible. So I was like, I hate everyone that has anything to do with this. This was horrible. And then maybe 2, 3, 4 years will go by. And then somehow through some random way, that person will get reintroduced into my life in a totally different context, and we'll end up becoming the bestest of friends. So sometimes it's the context, sometimes it's the space, sometimes it's what's going on in our life. But there are times where people we are meant to be connected to, when we finally do get connected, there's just something not quite clear to our thinking minds, the magnitude of what this moment is supposed to be to our spiritual self. So as you're going through life, have the patience, go inside and reflect. Make sure that every person you interact with in any way you can, that you're able to interact with them as your highest, most intentional self. Oftentimes I'll give apologies to my wife that goes something like, I'm sorry, I let my anxiety get the best of me. That's not who I am. Now, you only get those kind of apologies like once or twice a month. Okay. You start doing those all the time, now it starts to sound like an excuse. But legitimately, there are times where I just am hijacked by my emotions and I don't catch them quick enough, and I go into a pre-programmed response. So for me, the more and more I can catch myself, right? Like this morning, I have started to realize, I didn't realize this morning, this is something I've realized this past month, how much being tired affects my mood. Now, this shouldn't be groundbreaking, but how many of us abuse sleep? So I've been just becoming extremely diligent in getting 8 hours of sleep a night, and it's been a game changer. So now I really realized, like last night I didn't get as much sleep because I was finishing a big project. But luckily it's the first time in maybe 12 days that I got less than 7 hours of sleep. And I realized I was just being really short. So I said to myself, okay, you're tired and it is affecting your mood. So what I need you to do, Tom, is when someone says something, you need to take an extra 3 seconds before you respond, because most likely the response that you're going to give in like the normal amount of time, maybe like a second delay, is going to be that of kind of a jerk. So give yourself those extra 3 seconds. So instead of responding in a second, maybe respond in 4 seconds and remind yourself you're tired. Be even nicer than you think you should be. Now, that system didn't always work well, but it was that awareness, that attention that at least started to give me the opportunity to do better, instead of it just being an automatic response. And then the next day when I get some sleep, I think back on the day before and I'm just like, oh, why was I such a jerk? So these are my thoughts for you, my friends. Take from this what you will. These are the stories that are really giving the depth to my life, that's creating a whole new level of holistic happiness than I've ever experienced before. So in any way I can spread that to you, I can share that with you, is an honor, is a gift. Like I always say, I feel like my 5 best friends are the only ones who listen to this podcast. So I appreciate y'all. And if you're someone who has no idea who I am, if we've never met, we've never had a conversation, and you listen to this whole thing, I just have to give you a high five. That means so much to me. I appreciate you all so very much. Look, I have shared with you last week that over the past few months, I've really been reflecting upon how to create a holistic life, a holistic business, how to have this synergy. So what I've done is, for the first time ever, I've taken I believe, the unique and proven way of running ads, running marketing, running a business in a holistic, relationship building, storytelling centered way. That's a tongue twister. And I've compiled it into a program that you can go through on your own. It's called the Empower Yourself program. It is amazing. It is amazing. I have to say that I am so excited about this, because it's really been everything that I've learned through just this meteoric rise filled with heartbreak and excitement and face plants and success beyond my wildest dreams and keep you up in the middle of the night terrors, like all of that is scaling a business and trying to do it in a way that's ethical, that's holistic, that's nourishing. I finally had the chance to just sit down and just put this into something you can go through on your own and make it your own. I'm really not interested in people trying to like copy and paste what I do or trying to mimic me. I really want to give you the strategies, the systems of thinking, of interrogating, of really working through a problem, so that you can, anything I show you, you can break it apart, you can dissect it, and you can put it back together like a mad scientist in whatever way your life needs. So put that together. If you want to learn more about it, you're going to find it in the link. Otherwise, it's tomrell.me/DCM invite, direct connect method. So tomrell.me/DCM invite. Check it out. If you are short on cash flow, but rich in ambition, I got you. We are not turning anyone away from lack of funds, unless the lack of funds are zero, but you have to at least be able to invest $1 to join us. So we do have pay what you can scholarships available to anyone who needs it, as long as you're a dope person who gets what we're trying to do. You're going to find all that information down below. My friends, this has been a joy hanging out with you. I'm going to go ahead and sign off so I can get to my, I'm recording this on a Friday, so I can get to my Friday afternoon hike. I personally like to take the last 2-3 hours before my daughter gets off daycare on a Friday to hike. I found Friday afternoons are my most stressful moments, I think, because so much momentum is built up during the week. So I've created this kind of landing zone where I can just go on like a 2.5 hour hike and just process and transition into dad mode, so I don't think about, or I'm not trying to process the work week on the weekend. So I'm going to get out of here so I can go ahead and do that. I love you. I appreciate you. Wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.